Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Portland's Friday Forum, Oregon's premier public affairs forum. I'm Jim Zarin, President of the City Club, and I welcome you all, those of you here at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB FM or KBPS AM radio or watching on cable television. Thank you for joining us for this week's Friday Forum on this, the 30th of January, 2009. Our program today will feature the Chair of the Board of Commissioners of Multnomah County, who will share his plans and vision for the future of Multnomah County in these economically difficult times. But before we begin our program, I have several announcements. First, in consideration of those close to you and those in our radio and television audiences, if you have not already done so, please silence your cell phones or any other device that will make noise. We're pleased to acknowledge our 4 Friday Forum corporate sponsors for this quarter, without whose general financial support these City Club Friday Forum luncheons would not be possible. Our 4 corporate sponsors this quarter are The Standard, UBS, Girding Eadlin Development Company, and Pacific Power. We thank them all for their support. Now, beginning next Friday, City Club begins a new month of interesting and provocative Friday Forum programs. First, next week on February 6th, we will be pleased to welcome to our Friday Forum microphone Nicole June Maher, Executive Director of Portland's Native American Youth and Family Center. Her topic will be Making the Invisible Visible, Portland's Native American Community. Then the next week, Friday, February 13th, there will be a panel discussion addressing the topic of whether we are taking a short-sighted approach in this society to long-term care. The following week, February 20th, Jonah Edelman of the organization Stand for Children will make the case for the Oregon legislature continue to make progress with our schools during this legislative session despite the economic downturn. And then on February 27th, we will end the month with a program of undoubted interest when Portland's Mayor Sam Adams will give his State of the City address here at City Club. And I might say, I know the mayor is going to be with us today, but he is attending the funeral of one of the downtown shooting victims to give you another sense of what the mayor of a city like Portland has to do. But that program will be on February 27th. I also want to note in your bulletin for this week that just came out, the City Club has adopted the partisanship report here at a recent Friday Forum, and the club is seeking volunteers to be on the Awareness and Advocacy and Awareness Committee that promotes the recommendations in that report. So if there's anybody interested in working on the implementation of that partisanship report adopted by City Club, please contact the City Club staff in the back of the room or contact the club office. Now, for more details about that opportunity or any of the programs of City Club, please look for the City Club's future bulletins or go on the club's website. And now to our program. As the local government serving by far the most citizens in Oregon, Multnomah County is a $1.2 billion government enterprise. With 5,000 employees, it also is a major employer in the region and the state. The county is responsible for a wide range of public services, including our libraries, mental health care, drug and alcohol treatment, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and other public safety services, after-school education programs, and the Willamette River bridges, just to name some of the services. Now, like counties throughout this state and the country, Multnomah County government faces difficult economic challenges these days. Indeed, a recent Oregonian article indicated that under Governor Kulongoski's state budget, Multnomah County will be losing more than $17.5 million in state funding, while the county is already facing a $35 million budget shortfall for the upcoming fiscal year. And this without factoring in the substantially larger state budget deficit that many are projecting, and at a time when the demand for the human services that the county provides is increasingly dramatically due to the very economic conditions that have caused the government budget shortfalls in the first place. So, facing insufficient revenues to fully fund the budgetary needs of your jurisdiction services and your people, how does an elected official choose between funding mental health care versus public safety, or libraries versus bridges? Are all not important? Arguably are all not essential. To address these questions, we are pleased to have as our speaker today the chair of the board of Multnomah County. Our speaker will share with us his plans to see the county through these severe economic times and to foster a culture of innovation and accountability in a resource-constrained environment. Born and raised in Portland and a graduate of Lincoln High School, our speaker earned a BA in economics from Stanford University and then an MBA from Columbia University, and then a master's in public policy from the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. After finishing grad school, he was a lecturer in political science at Northeastern University in Boston, and in 1993 published a book entitled Government That Works: Innovation in State and Local Government. Before returning to Portland in 2004, he worked for several financial services companies, including Bank of America and Copper Mountain Trust. And, of course, after coming to Portland, he was an active volunteer and leader in the Portland nonprofit community. He was elected to public office on his first attempt in 2006, when Multnomah County's voters entrusted him with the office of chair of the county's Board of Commissioners. Now, our speaker enjoys the outdoors and what might be called endurance activities. And in support of that observation, let me list some of the details. He has been to the top of Mount Hood, he estimates a couple of dozen times. He has snowshoed to the North Pole. He has completed the Ironman Triathlon in Kona, Hawaii twice. And he is a veteran of 3 expeditions to Mount Everest, which he successfully summited in 2002. Now, as a divorced man, I am moved to contend, however, that these are not, in fact, the most significant accomplishments in his impressive life. I rather contend that his most amazing feat is related to the fact his wife, Katrina, is here with us today, and I say that because, as some of you may remember from my predecessor, Don Williams' announcement or introduction last year, our speaker actually took his wife along on that trip to the North Pole on their honeymoon. And yet, he's not only still married to her, and not only is she here with us today, but I also know from our thorough City Club Friday Forum investigation that she actually has a Facebook page on which, if you look at it, she invited people to come hear her husband here today at the Governor Hotel. It's an amazing accomplishment indeed. So, without further ado, please give a warm City Club welcome to this very accomplished man, the chair of the Board of Commissioners of Multnomah County, Ted Wheeler.
Well, thank you very much for that generous, forthright, and very revealing introduction. I am Ted Wheeler, and I am the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners of Multnomah County, and my wife is here. She's here right in the front row, but it remains to be seen whether she's here to support or to heckle. So we'll find out. I always appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of the City Club. As I look out here in the audience, I see a lot of friendly faces. And frankly, I also see a lot of concerned faces. And I know why the concern is on some of those faces. There's a lot of people in this room today who invest heavily in supporting our community and people in need. And I think you're waiting for a message from me about what this year's fiscal crisis means. And I do intend to speak about that. I was asked specifically to come and talk about the state of Multnomah County. And in particular, I want to tell you about where we are, where I think we should head, and what the current challenges and opportunities are in this current environment. But before I do that, I also want to acknowledge a couple of people in the audience. First and foremost, of course, my lovely wife, Katrina, who does this job with me. And I mean that in every sense of the word. She lives it with me, both the good and the bad, and I thank you for that. My parents are here as well. My father I saw sitting in the back of the room. It's good to see you too, Dad. My mother is on her way. A number of my elected colleagues are here as well. My fellow commissioners, Commissioner Jeff Kogan is in the room. Commissioner Judy Shiprack I saw in the room over here. Commissioner Deborah Kafori I saw somewhere over here. Commissioner Diane McKeel is also here. So we have a new group of leaders at Multnomah County standing ready to serve your community. In addition, in the back of the room, I saw Sheriff Bob Skipper. Sheriff, it's good to see you here, and I don't know whether I saw our County Auditor, Lavon Griffin-Villade, she is right here, or the District Attorney, Mike Shrunk. I want to thank all of you and tell you how much I appreciate the honor of serving with you. I also saw my friend Congressman David Wu sitting in the audience, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge his presence today as well. I thank you for listening, in particular when we start talking about the Selwood Bridge. So I want to start with one very important caveat right up front, and that is I'm speaking to you today on my own behalf. The viewpoints that I'm going to share with you today are my own, and they do not represent necessarily the opinions of my fellow commissioners, other agency heads, or even department heads within Multnomah County. As the CEO and chairman of the board of commissioners of Multnomah County, my job is far more than just balancing the budget or keeping the lights on. I see my role most importantly as being able to provide a clear vision for our county organization and then providing the leadership to realize that vision. In order to understand the vision, I think you need to understand something about what motivates me and also what values drive my leadership personally. First and foremost, you need to know this about me. I believe that government, with the right leadership, has the potential to be a force for great good in the community. I believe in public service, but not just as a job. I see it as a personal calling. Our community is full of people who are struggling in many different ways. People who live in poverty and have to literally choose between paying for food and paying the rent. There's far too many children amongst those ranks. We work with people who suffer from chronic mental illness, people who are disabled, older, frail adults who are trying to live safely and independently and with dignity in their own homes. Children who live on the streets and wonder when and if there will ever be a caring adult in their lives. These are our fellow citizens. They are our responsibility. I believe that the way we treat the most vulnerable people in our community says an awful lot about who we are as a community. At Multnomah County, it's our mission and it's our calling to reach out to all of these people. Multnomah County also has an important mission around keeping the public safe. The Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the Department of Community Justice, those three departments account for more than half of the county's general fund discretionary dollars. We believe in the rule of law at Multnomah County. I believe in accountability, I believe in rehabilitation, and I believe in redemption. I'm taking the time to make these points because I think you need to know that my leadership does not just come from performance metrics, from budgets, from rows of numbers, or columns. It comes from deep core values on which I am not willing to compromise. I believe that the values that I hold are shared by the people that I work with at Multnomah County and the people who lead alongside me. We work relentlessly to help the impoverished become economically self-sufficient so that they can support themselves and their families. We fight not only for the safety of our community, but also for a fair, accountable, and balanced public safety system. We work hard to eliminate inequities because we don't think it's fair that a child's options in life should be curtailed just because of the color of their skin or because of the neighborhood they happen to be raised. We fight against bad health outcomes because it doesn't make sense to us that diseases that are easily treatable should be allowed to spread amongst us. We work tirelessly to improve education outcomes because we do not accept that nearly half of the students who enter 9th grade in our community do not graduate from 12th grade on time. It's a battle every day to reclaim broken lives, those who are former criminals, those who are addicted, those who are young people who want to have a caring adult. We reached out to all of them because they deserve it and they are our fellow citizens. My vision for Multnomah County is actually a very simple one. I want us to be the best local government, not only in the state of Oregon, but in the entire United States of America. I want us to be effective, and I want us to be accountable. As I look into the future, we will have earned the trust of the public that we serve because we will deliver the services they want and expect, and we'll deliver them exceptionally well. We'll hire the best people, we'll give them the tools they need and the training they need, and then we'll ask a great deal of them. They won't see that as a hassle, they'll see it as a matter of pride. We'll lead with an eye to the future. We won't ignore critical infrastructure or pass off politically challenging projects to future generation. On the contrary, we'll own those projects and we'll take those responsibilities as our own, and we will deal with them ourselves today. The lines between city and county government will blur. We will collaborate, we will align, and in some cases, we will consolidate where it makes sense to do so in the interest of the public good, especially in the areas of public safety, transportation, emergency management, mental health services, addiction services, and other services. We'll work together especially closely when the decisions that we make could potentially have a negative impact on each of us. State government won't treat us as a pauper with our hand extended asking for funds. Instead, they will value us for what we are, a critical partner in shaping the communities in which all of our citizens live. They'll see us as a critical and engaged partner. That's my vision for Multnomah County government. But I want to acknowledge right off the bat, we have a long way to go. And I'll do my level best every day to lead us there. I'm very, very proud of the work Multnomah County has done over the last year. Yes, we've had some challenges, to be frank with you, but we've also accomplished a great deal. Our network of 12 school-based health clinics and 5 community-based health clinics did an outstanding job of providing health in our community. Collectively, they had over 48,000 visits last year. 1 out of every 5 children in Multnomah County visited a Multnomah County health clinic. Half the children who live in poverty in Multnomah County receive basic preventative health care services in a Multnomah County health clinic. For many people in our community, it's the only option that was available to them to receive basic health care services. On the other side of the equation, one of the most important issues that impacted Multnomah County last year was the near collapse of Cascadia Behavioral Health Services. It's one of our major contractors. It provides at the time, it provided 85% of our mental health services, and it nearly went away. We almost lost our entire mental health care system overnight. I can't tell you what it felt like to be on a phone call in the middle of the night with Cascadia's bankers who had just informed me that they'd cleaned out Cascadia's accounts and there wasn't enough money left to meet the payroll. What I was really proud about is the way that Multnomah County worked closely with the state of Oregon to put together an emergency loan package to keep Cascadia moving long enough that we could then work with Cascadia's new leadership, other engaged partners in the community, banks who were providing the loan package, insurance companies, hospitals, and others to put together a system that today I can say is stable. Another impact of the Cascadia crisis was that we've completely revamped our contract management process. We want to make sure that what happened with Cascadia never happens again in Multnomah County. Our 53 Sun schools continued to provide outstanding academic, mentoring, and support services for over 17,000 children and 3,000 adults in our community. They helped improve their reading scores for 73% of the kids who participated in the program. It improved math scores for 76% of the kids who participated in the program. More importantly, they kept kids in school and engaged parents in the educational process. Our library system is one of the most respected in the entire United States of America. Last year, our library system checked out over 20 million items in our 16 branches in our main library. Over 350,000 people participated in our library, in our community outreach programs. Nearly 56,000 alone participated in our summer reading program. While other counties around the state actually closed their public libraries, Multnomah County passed a levy in which we promised to build 2 new libraries, one in North Portland in the Kenton neighborhood and one in the Troutdale area. I'm proud to say that the Board of County Commissioners voted yesterday to authorize a lease on the library in the Kenton neighborhood. The Troutdale branch isn't far behind, so Multnomah County will live up to that promise, even in tough economic times. At a time when communities, not only in the state of Oregon, but throughout the region and the nation, are struggling to figure out how to fund basic transportation infrastructure projects, Multnomah County, noticed almost by nobody, finished building a new bridge last year over the Willamette River, the new Sauvie Island Bridge. Multnomah County showed that it can be done, even in tough economic times. So don't tell me that we can't get the new Selwood Bridge done. We did it with Sauvie Island, we'll do it with Selwood. The Roads Division was also very successful. There's a project out in East County that's been very important. It's the so-called 223rd underpass. What it really is a viaduct that goes under a railroad crossing. It's been a pinch point, it's a safety problem, and it's been a blockage to economic development on industrial properties that are in the immediate vicinity. Multnomah County broke through 40 years of gridlock on that project by re-engineering the project. They figured out a way to engineer that project so that the railroad, which is one of the busiest rail lines in the entire western United States, could stay open while the construction takes place. That showed a lot of ingenuity. The Board of County Commissioners worked with the Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office to expand the warrant strike force to reduce the backlog of nearly 30,000 outstanding arrest warrants in Multnomah County. The progress has been tremendous. We wanted to send a strong signal that if you have committed a serious crime, there is no safe haven for you in Multnomah County. Multnomah County, speaking of public safety, has lost nearly 500 jail beds in the last 8 years alone. Last year we lost 80. The year before I took office, there were over 5,000 people released early from our jails because of a lack of jail space. Well, I'm very proud of the way that in the last 2 years, our public safety partners have come together and figured out new ways to manage our jail system with fewer resources. For example, the Department of Community Justice created an enhanced community-based sanction program that not only eliminated the need for 80 expensive jail beds, but it also tripled the number of people in Multnomah County on supervised community service. The Sheriff's Office made great strides last year in terms of reinventing itself and improving its accountability, controlling overtime and leave costs, and managing our jail facilities. I want to thank our new sheriff for his tremendous leadership. Multnomah County continues to innovate. One of the initiatives I'm the most proud of in the last 2 years is Multnomah County's Health Equity Initiative. It addresses differences right here in our community in terms of health outcomes based on race. This is one of several equity initiatives that Multnomah County is currently working on. The program has not only drawn interest and support locally, it's caught the attention of people nationally for its excellence. We've documented the causes of those health disparities, we've started the community dialogue, and now we're charting specific strategies that we'll pursue in the year ahead. The Board of County Commissioners was only the third jurisdiction, the third group to vote in the entire United States in favor of chain restaurant nutritional labeling policies that help consumers make more informed choices when they purchase meals at a fast food restaurant. We also started building solar panels on the Multnomah County buildings that will ultimately deliver 1 million kilowatt solar hours of electricity. This was done under the leadership of Jeff Kogan, who started this project when he was at the city. He brought it to Multnomah County, and he brought it to life. Thank you, Jeff, for being an innovative leader around solar energy and sustainable practices. So there are several other areas around economic development, job creation, responding to community emergencies, that I could talk about that I won't. But you get the point. The point is, despite our economic woes, we've been very productive, we've been action-oriented, and we've been working well on behalf of the community in delivering positive outcomes. These are just some of the things we did. I also want you to know that we were fiscally smart. There were a lot of jurisdictions who did not plan for the economic downturn. Our Board of County Commissioners anticipated 2 years ago that the economy would turn, and as a result, we took specific steps to stabilize our financial position. We paid down our debt, we funded our reserves, we contained our costs, we renegotiated contracts so that we derived full value for the services that we were providing, and we invested in technologies that made us more effective and more efficient and more cost-effective in terms of the services that we were delivering to the community. In the year ahead, there's no question that Multnomah County is going to be challenged even greater than we have been in the last year. It's going to require the best leadership that I have to offer, and that goes for my fellow commissioners as well. We're about to enter our 9th year of progressive budget cuts. What does that mean? That means that all the easy cuts have been taken. We're down to the bones of the organization, down to the core services. This year's budget reductions will challenge us not only to reduce our spending in certain areas, but to eliminate entire programs. Part of leadership, in my mind, is acknowledging the reality of our situation and telling the public the truth, no matter how much it may hurt. The truth is, we can't buy the same level of services for significantly less dollars. While we will effectively manage the organization and adapt, doing business differently and building sustainable partnerships is not going to overcome $40 or $50 or $60 million in reductions. Those are just the uncomfortable facts. Having said that, we will adapt, and I will be thoughtful in terms of how I manage the county through these difficult times. The first thing we're going to do is focus. By focusing, I mean we are going to prioritize the services we provide. We're going to invest in what works. We're going to do that based on the performance measurements and outcomes data. But we're not going to lose sight of the values that I articulated earlier. We're not going to throw the most vulnerable people in our community under the bus. People with disabilities, people who suffer from mental illness, older adults who are frail and want to live independently and with dignity and safely in their own homes. We will protect those people the very best we can, come hell or come high water. We'll have a smaller footprint, but we're not going to sacrifice quality. We'll provide fewer services, but those services that we do provide, we're going to provide well. We'll be relentless about accountability. Nobody knows better than I do how important it is from the perspective of the taxpayers to understand that every dollar we are spending wisely and effectively. And frankly, that Cascadia crisis undercut my credibility on this issue. So you can bet I take it doubly seriously. We will develop strategic partnerships, but only because we and other governments are going to be forced to do that and work together in a collaborative nature. So we need to change not only our management principles, we need to change our attitudes about what it means to work together and collaborate. And I don't just mean that about government to government. It includes the private sector, it includes the nonprofit sector, it includes the faith sector, and others who can come together and work with us to help make this a strong and vibrant community, even in dark economic times. One of my favorite quotes, and unfortunately one of the most overquoted quotes, is the one from Winston Churchill. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now, I'm not sure whether he actually said that or not, but it's a good enough quote he probably wouldn't have minded. Our greatest opportunity during this budget crisis is to hold business as usual up to the searing light and question why we do the things we do. And I'm going to ask some tough questions. And it's going to make some people very angry when I ask those questions. Should Multnomah County be in the bridge business? We have a great bridge crew. They do a lot of terrific work. They do outstanding things on our bridges. They keep them operational even with limited resources. But let's face the facts. Multnomah County does not have and will never have the capacity to maintain those 6 Willamette River bridges the way they deserve and need to be maintained. The mayor and I have already agreed to convene a group of knowledgeable leaders in this community to answer that question and determine whether there's economies of scale that could be derived from a closer partnership with the city of Portland and others. What should we do with the Wapato jail? Given our massive budget shortfall, I can tell you straight up that there is no clear path to opening the Wapato jail solely with Multnomah County general funds, nor do I think it's a fiscally responsible thing to do in this budget environment. It would simply push other public safety priorities off the table. I don't think that's a smart way to go. The way to go is through a partnership. A partnership is the right way to go, and the smartest partnership we could have today is with the state of Oregon. With the passage of Measure 57, there's no question that the state of Oregon is going to need additional jail capacity. They're particularly going to need it in the urban areas. When you consider that the next prison that the state of Oregon builds will cost you between $1 and $1.5 billion, it makes sense to me that we should at least be asking the question, why not have the state consider the options around Wapato? And why can't we forge a partnership that gives us capacity if we need it in that facility, but also allows the state to solve an urgent problem? In human services, one of our top priorities is to build a facility in this community where people who are suffering from mental health and who are acting out and who are a danger to themselves and others in the community can be taken for proper treatment instead of being taken to jail or to an expensive hospital. In technical terms, that's called a subacute mental health treatment facility. The important thing is, last year we put $1 million into our budget to tip that process off. The City of Portland, through the PDC, has also agreed to help build that facility. I believe we can start building that facility within the next year and a half. The rub is the funding to operate it. Multnomah County is willing to shoulder our part because it's a very expensive facility to operate, but we need partners who will step up to the plate and agree with us that this is a very urgent priority in our community and that it's something we should fund, and we should stop making excuses about why we can't and just get the job done. Around education, the mayor and I have convened a major educational initiative to address the unacceptably high dropout rates right here in our own community. As I said, only about half the kids who enter 9th grade are actually finishing 12th grade on time. In addition, there's a substantial achievement gap based on race. That should be unacceptable to us as a matter of principle, and we will pursue a strategy to address that problem over the next 5 years. The last point I want to raise is a question of changing the frame. The way we've been at this for the last 8 years at Multnomah County is we've made the trade-offs that Jim referred to earlier. Health versus mental health, older adults versus kids. It's the wrong question and it's the wrong frame, because it's not our budget that's creating the problem. What's creating the problem is the way the county gets its revenues. Every year, our revenues come in below the increase in the cost of providing the services that our community wants. The devil is in the details of Measure 50, which we passed in the state of Oregon. Measure 50 limits property tax revenues to approximately 3% growth per year. Yet our costs are growing at about 6.5% per year. And before you say, well, do a better job of controlling your costs, understand that inflation for a good portion of recent history has been over that 3%. And most private sector businesses consider themselves lucky if they can keep their costs within 6%. So we need to look at reforming it, not so we can tax people more, but so that we can stabilize our revenues, so that we can plan for and frankly eliminate a gross inequity that exists in Measure 50. The gross inequity is that people who have two houses that are valued the same in this community in terms of market values and who receive the same services from local government, same types of houses, same values, same services, can pay wildly different property taxes. We have examples in Multnomah County where some people are paying 9 times more than other people in the community who have similarly valued houses. That's not fair. And on top of it, the system does not allow us to plan. So those are the issues that we will raise in the coming year. In closing, I just want to say it's a tremendous privilege to be the chairman of Multnomah County, even in tough times, and maybe even especially in tough times. And I never forget, not one single day, that I am an at-will employee. I'm here because you allow me to. And I hope that every day I'm on the job, I will maintain your trust and support. Thank you very much. 30 minutes, 2 seconds.
Very good. Well, good shot up there. The first question of our speaker, as always, will be from our Board of Governors host. Our board host today is John Horvick. John Horvick is the project director for the Parents and Children Together study at Oregon Health and Science University. He joined City Club in 2004. He was a co-chair of the club's New Leaders Council from 2005 to 2008. He's also served on 2 research study committees. Since last year, he's been a member of the club's research board, and currently is a member of the club's governance task force. John Horvick became a member of the Board of Governors in 2006. John?
Thank you. My question is pretty simple. Given the cost of the Selwood Bridge project, how can we possibly afford it?
The answer is we can't. We are very near the end of a public process that's going to determine both the location and the size and configuration of the Selwood Bridge. And then that plan is going to be sent to the federal government, to Congressman Wu and others, and they'll look at it. And our expectation is, given that it will be a regional consensus, they'll approve it. When they approve it, then it's up to us to figure out how to pay for it all. Multnomah County will be responsible for contributing some funding to that project. And by some, I mean a lot, like maybe $100 million out of the total $300 and some odd million that it might cost. But the fact is, we're not going to be able to do it unless we can leverage state and federal dollars to get the project done. Now, just raising the local match is a very challenging prospect. And I've been talking with people, including Mayor Adams, who's the Transportation Commissioner for the City of Portland, about ways that we might leverage the governor's transportation package to raise the dollars for the local match. So there are opportunities that I see for us to do our bit, but then we're going to have to lobby very, very hard, both in Salem and Washington, D.C., to make sure that the project comes to fruition.
Okay, we're now at the part of our program where we take questions from the floor. We have a large crowd here. I invite everybody who's a City Club member and has a question for our speaker to go to the microphone to my left over here. We ask that everybody identify themselves as a City Club member, because that's one of the privileges of membership. We ask you keep your question to 30 seconds or less. Remember that it actually is a question, not a speech. And we'll end at 1:15. Thank you.
Steve Novick, City Club member. Mr. Chair, I've heard advocates say that the governor's budget dramatically underfunds mental health and alcohol and drug treatment programs in terms of what the voters were told they were going to get under Measure 57. That the governor's budget does not deliver the level of funding for alcohol and drug treatment the Measure 57 promised. I've also heard that his budget guts community alcohol and drug treatment programs, which will exacerbate the problem. Now, realizing the governor has a tough job, his revenues are collapsing, would you agree that the advocates are right, that alcohol and drug treatment programs are underfunded, and would you suggest that the governor and the legislature take steps to raise additional revenues to address this problem?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, is the answer to the question. The governor's budget does, in fact, eviscerate alcohol and drug treatment programs. And I do understand, and Mr. Novick is correct, to acknowledge the good things that the governor did in his budget. He had a very, very tough job. I believe he's delivered. And now it's time to move on and work with the legislature and try and make the case to them that treatment is important. And it is. Treatment works. We know that for every dollar we invest, according to the RAND Corporation, in treatment programs, we save about 6 other dollars in terms of public health and public safety and other costs to society. So it's a good trade-off for us. And the consequences of the budget as it currently exists would be disastrous for Multnomah County. But there's no point looking backwards. We're going to focus on the legislature and do our best to bring the data and the examples and the folks that we have seen, our clients who've gone through treatment, so they can go down and meet with legislators and talk about their very positive experiences.
Mark Anderson, City Club member. Another question on mental health, which is the large chunk of the county's budget. You mentioned earlier the Cascadia implosion and a regrouping of contract management. Could you share with us some of the details of how you're making contract management more effective, holding contractors accountable and responsible?
Yes. In terms of contract management, the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution shortly after the Cascadia crisis that called for our procurement as well as our contract oversight of our human service contracts to develop specific principles and protocols for ensuring not only that we were collecting the data that was necessary for us to collect in order to be able to determine whether or not the contracts were being managed effectively. But we also wanted to be able to collect the data that would help guide us in terms of understanding what questions weren't being asked. And the reason I mention that is because the Cascadia crisis, we thought we had all the right data. We asked for audit reports. We asked for board documentation. We looked at certain metrics. And the bottom line is nobody caught the Cascadia crisis before it developed into a crisis. So we're looking at deeper accountability measures. There's 10 metrics specifically that we're using that are new. We're requiring additional standards of reporting. We're asking different questions of outside independent auditors to ensure that we understand not only that we're getting what we thought we were purchasing with the contract, but that we're also understanding that the organization with which we're contracting is a viable, ongoing organization.
Don Williams, City Club member. Chairman Wheeler, I'm going to start my question out with what some would consider a trite phrase, city-county consolidation. Over the years, City Club has done a number of research reports, and many people have stated this is a panacea for all the funding problems and organizational problems of both jurisdictions. My question is simple. Would you comment on it?
It's not a panacea. And talking about it in general, do we collapse county government into city government and call it good? That's definitely not a panacea. I suggested specific areas where I think there are opportunities for either collaboration or consolidation. I mentioned public safety. I mentioned transportation. I mentioned mental health services. There are back office services like IT and infrastructure. Where we could also potentially be collaborating, certainly around addiction services and mental health services. The city and the county should be working much more closely together than we are today. And again, I don't think it's an academic question. I think it's necessary that we take up these issues, given that both the county and the city are short on resources. We need to be pulling in the same direction. Not the least important fact, by the way, of which is if I take a pin and shove it into the floor here, where am I standing? I'm standing both in the city of Portland and in Multnomah County. So the pin tells me that we should look at that question seriously. It's not an easy question, though, either. I just want to point out there's a lot that has to happen between here and there. Congressman.
David Wu, City Club member. I've got the Selwood Bridge on my list, and I should point out it connects the 3rd and the 5th congressional districts. Ted, I thought I'd save you a trip to Washington, D.C. and open it up for other things that might be on Multnomah County's list. The House-passed economic stimulus bill passes a lot of funds through the state government. Some of those will benefit local government, particularly health care, maybe school construction, and a few other things. We will probably be doing more significant economic recovery bits as we go, whether it's in one big package or in multiple small packages. From the county perspective, what should be in future packages to be of maximum assistance to an entity like Multnomah County?
I am thrilled that you asked that question. And I appreciate, frankly, that you've asked the question, because you may be the first person who's asked me what we in local government think the makeup of the package should be. I think we're being penny wise and pound foolish. While I agree that infrastructure is a critical need in this nation and certainly in this state and even in our community, and while we certainly have capital construction projects that are important to us, the fact remains that the budget cuts we're going to hand out are going to cost hundreds of people their jobs in this community. I don't understand why we aren't taking stimulus and investing it in people, in human services. Those are leveraging dollars. It not only protects the jobs of people in nonprofit organizations and in the public sector who provide those services, but it also continues to help the people who are going to be hurt. It gets at Mr. Novik's question about treatment. And we just pick up the costs elsewhere. It gets at the issue of home health care, where if people aren't being supported in their homes, they're just going to be institutionalized somewhere else. It gets at the issue of medical care, which prevents other costs to society. So I would encourage you and your colleagues to look at how we invest in human services and human capital along with the infrastructure. Thank you, Congressman.
Bill Harris, a City Club member. What is the process you think might work or would suggest for reversing the effect of Measure 50 that you described as a salient problem?
There's a couple of steps that I would encourage us to take. First of all, nobody would support simply, let me step back. There's a couple of things you'd want to do. First of all, narrow the disparity. I talked about that disparity. In some cases, people are paying 9 times more in property taxes than somebody else who has a similar house in the same jurisdiction. I would encourage us to narrow that disparity. So whereas somebody's paying 10% of their paying taxes on 10% of their real market value and somebody else is paying 90% of their real market value, why not compress that so we get to 30 and 50? So at least the disparity is narrowed, if not eliminated outright. Second of all, change the numbers. 3% was the number that the legislature picked. They said that under Measure 50, property tax would be pegged at $1996 less 10%, and then they would only be allowed to grow at 3%. 3% seemed like a good idea at the time. The people who came up with that 3% thought it would cover the cost, the increasing cost of government, but that number has not worked for us. The cost of government has grown more, largely because of fuel, infrastructure, and healthcare costs. So change the 3% to something else. And I wouldn't deign to pick a specific number, but say 4 or 5%, something different. The third part is a reset. Part of Measure 50, the concern was that if you're an older adult and you're on a fixed income, you could literally be taxed out of your house. That was true. But there's ways to fix that. One is a reset on sale, so that when you sell your house, then it would reset to a higher value that's closer to real market value. And fourth, we used to have something called HARP, Homeowners Rental and Assistance Program in the state of Oregon, that would protect specifically poor, disabled, or people on fixed incomes from the chance of losing their house because of some vagary in the tax code. Those are the 4 things I would suggest specifically. Jay Bloom. Here comes the zinger.
Jay Bloom, City Club Ted. Our new president said that he'll be working hard on our behalf, but there's a role for all of us to play. Other than cheering the county on, what could the average citizen do for you?
There's a couple of things that the average citizen can do. First of all, you may have noticed that I put out a call for donations recently. A lot of the nonprofit human service providers in our community, particularly those that work with the poor, are seeing a huge increase in demand for services. If you can go through your house, go through your cupboards, find anything you could potentially donate, whether it's food, whether it's blankets, whether it's clothing, bring it down to Multnomah County. We have numerous drop-off locations. You can see them on our website. We will take those goods and we will distribute those to organizations like CARES Northwest, like the Oregon Food Bank, Human Solutions in East County. So that's one quick, easy, costless way you can help. Another is to support your favorite nonprofit organizations. I've been to enough fundraisers lately to know this is going to be a horrible year for human service providers, not just because of shrinking public resources, but also because their A-list is shrinking, their A-list of private donors is shrinking, and corporations are cutting back on their charitable giving as well. So anything you can do to step up and support organizations. A third way is volunteer. There's no question that organizations like Hands On Portland and other nonprofits directly are desperate for citizens to step forward and help out the rest of the community. In tough economic times, we cannot rely on government. We've got to pull together as citizens, as a community, and support the services and the values that are important to us in our community.
John Leeper, City Club member. Thank you for a very good program, Chair Wheeler.
Thank you, John.
My question concerns Wapato. I've heard on several occasions that one of the reasons that Multnomah County hasn't been able to sublease all or a portion of the jail is the cost per night per inmate. And with that in mind, has the county given any thought to possibly writing off at least a portion of the cost to make the cost per night per inmate competitive so that it could be leased to some other agency?
The answer is yes. We have considered everything. There is nothing more to be considered when it comes to the question of Wapato. I'm being tongue-in-cheek, so don't take me too... anybody has great ideas, I'm still listening. We looked at the marginal cost analysis, too. We have three facilities, Wapato being the one that's not open. We have two other facilities. We've been working with the sheriff and looking at how we organize not just Wapato, but all of our jail beds, seeing if there isn't a more cost-effective configuration, seeing if there isn't a way for partners to come in and pay the additional marginal cost of operating the Wapato facility. And the bottom line is that's not the primary impediment. The primary impediment, frankly, has to do with the fact that nobody wants to take Multnomah County's political risk. Why on earth would any other elected leader in the state of Oregon want to step up and fix Multnomah County's old mistake unless there was some real value in it for them? And with the passage of Measure 57, I think that was a deal changer. I think it created some real value for the state, and that's why we're working so closely with our good friend Max Williams down in Salem. The sheriff has been extremely involved in the leadership of this effort, and frankly, we've talked to other potential partners around the state and out of the state. We've looked at private sector opportunities that might help us move this along, and I still think the best partnership possibilities with the state of Oregon. And I just have to say how pleased I am with the way they have engaged us on this conversation.
Paul Milius, club member.
Hi, Paul.
The costs of public safety are not just incarceration, but also arrest, booking, adjudication, and so on. 80% of drug offenders nationally are marijuana offenders, most of those for simple possession. How much would we save if we stopped arresting and booking marijuana offenders?
I would probably be smart to leave that question to the district attorney or the sheriff, because I honestly don't know the answer to your question. I don't know what the cost savings would be, and I don't know what the consequences would be, so I can't give you a good answer. And rather than just spinning a yarn, I'm just going to tell you straight up, I don't know.
Kurt Wavering, member. Just a comment about our magnificent library system. I go online, I have access to the entire card catalog. They send my books to my local library, which is within walking distance. So it's a wonderful system, and I appreciate all the people who have created that. My question is also about jailing offenders. 57 was basically a hardline approach to criminals, and I'm wondering if there's any way that we can undo that and get a more sane way of dealing with people who are offending and move more towards rehabilitation than just locking them up.
In the short term, I believe the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Measure 57 was actually a compromise. There was a much more stringent bill that was going to be put on the ballot, and there was concern in the legislature in particular that that bill would, that ballot measure would pass. And so the legislature thought it would be wise that if a public safety, a Measure 11 bill was going to pass, it would be wise to have one that included treatment as part of the package. And so Measure 57 was put up in that spirit. I don't think personally, and again, this is just my opinion and I could be completely wrong, I don't think the legislature is going to be eager to visit this subject this year with all the problems that they're currently facing. And it would either have to be a legislative referral or it would have to be a citizen petition effort to put something else on the ballot to either reverse or amend Measure 57. I'm not aware of any such efforts that are currently underway. Thanks, Jim.
I just want to say it every once in a while at these Friday forums, we have those moments. It struck me again today. Here we have a congressman and the chair of the board of the largest county in the state talking about where we ought to invest federal funds to solve our country's problems. This is a pretty amazing nonprofit too. So we hope you all keep that in mind when you think about the annual fund of City Club. So, continuing that theme, please join us next week to learn about Portland's Native American community from Nicole June Maher. And as we close, please join me in expressing our appreciation to our excellent speaker today, Ted Wheeler. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.